When the Jaguars announced on Tuesday that they will be playing 2 games in London in 2020 on a back-to-back basis, my first thought was home game for one, road game for the other. Oh no, it's a pair of home games. 25% of the home schedule will be played not in Jacksonville, but in London. And this is something that I think we've all kind of suspected could happen, and maybe at some point it's going to be like the old County Stadium in Milwaukee, Lambeau Field split the Packers did for all those years. But I was shocked that the Jaguars are making that move from 7-1 to 6-2 because it invites speculation as to when it's going to be 5-3 or 4-4. Peter, your thoughts?
2 thoughts, Mike. First of all, not that this is going to be anything that anybody is against, but eventually when the NFL starts playing either 3 or 2 preseason games, that will take, say, once every other year, if they continue to do this, a home game away in August. So what it means is that now, really theoretically, that the Jaguars will be not home 9 or 10 times a year. They're going to be home maybe 7 times a year. That's the first thing I thought. I mean, the second thing is, look, Shad Khan, when he bought this team and when the NFL started making noise about London, whatever this was, 5, 6, 7 years ago, when all this happened, there was no question that he had London in his sights. They want to be the NFL's team in London. And all this does is it gives them more of a reason to have a foothold permanently in London, whether they end up moving there or not. They've already got a foothold, Mike, because they play their games at Wembley, or they have, rather than at the NFL's new stadium in Tottenham. So for those who don't care about that, just understand that that is a very big deal, because they're not siding with the NFL. Everybody has thought that the NFL, when they move to London, will play at this beautiful football palace in Tottenham, where the Tottenham Hotspur play. But instead, they've stayed at Wembley. They want to have their own foothold, their own footprint in London. Yeah. So to me, do you remember, Mike, a long time ago when Al Michaels said, hey, the NFL is going to have 2 teams in London, and everybody laughed?
L.A.
I think, yeah, in L.A. Sorry about that. And I think right now, the NFL really, eventually, I don't know when, 15 years, maybe, I don't know, is going to have 2 teams in London.
Well, I do think it's cool that Jacksonville is trying to create a little culture there in London. I do. And like to Peter's point about the Wembley Stadium, yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly. They're trying to kind of make that like their home away from home to a degree, and hope that they can create a culture of Jaguars fan base in London. And okay, I got no problem with it. I don't. The Jags, yes, they're one of the newer franchises in our league. We know that. And hey, I mean, economically, it makes sense for Shad Khan and the Jaguars too. I mean, come on, the Jaguars games, we watched them. Yeah, the stadium's full. It's fake full. Come on, there's tarps over like 5,000-10,000 seats every game. So, I understand this type of move and all that. Now, to say that it's going to happen full time, all right, that's where I don't know how that can happen. That's my only thing. I could see them maybe splitting even down the future more home games, with London or something like that. But I just know me, as if I was a veteran NFL football player and they told me, damn, hey, you got to go to London and do that, and your team's going to be playing over there. You tell me I'm going to move my kids, figure out, the cash swap out, what the hell they got over there, the pound, the dollar, all of those things, move my kids to a school that's going to be a completely different system. Those things, to me, I just don't know how the NFL can make that work. But I'm in favor for Jacksonville doing this more than one game. I think it's actually kind of cool.
There are so many logistical issues that relate to moving a team to London. You mentioned exchange rate, tax rate, the road trip, which for many teams is leave Saturday, back Sunday night. You're going to be gone for 3 weeks at a time. Because when you cross the pond, you're going to stay there for multiple home games before you come back, or road games before you come back for multiple home games. But here's the bottom line. it is the bottom line. It's about money. The Jaguars make more per game in London than they make in Jacksonville. Right. And I say this all the time when it comes down to stadiums. You put stadiums where the money and the people are. You put teams where the money and the people are. And there's more money and people in London than there is in Jacksonville. And there's going to be another city where, as the stadium reaches the end of its useful life, and we hear all this talk about how committed ownership is to staying until they're not, right? And I think you're right, Peter. I think the Jaguars become the guinea pigs to work out all the kinks in London. And as another team sees, hey, you know what? That works. You may have that second team. You've got the two stadiums. You get the two teams. Natural rivalry. It makes a ton of sense. And I was told a couple of years ago that if and when Shad Khan wants to move the team there full time, he will have support from membership. They will vote in favor of it. Anytime he wants to move, he will get the approval to move.
All right. Well, can I just say one thing here? Just one thing.
Yes.
Well, to me, like, I mean, you know, isn't Jacksonville, you know, spending $500 million to make their own little Patriot place outside of, like, so that it doesn't look like he's trying to do anything here in the recent future, right? Aren't they trying to build something there close to their stadium to get more of an environment around the stadium, a little bit like New England? Maybe I'm wrong, but I also thought maybe that was part of the reason they picked 2 games too. Like they're going to have heavy construction during those weeks, and that's why they wanted to move. I don't know, but I just wondered that. Sorry.
Well, no, and you're right.
I mean,
Shad Khan. Yeah. Go ahead, Peter.
Now, listen. Here's the biggest question. Okay, about Mike. You talk about logistics. Let's say one thing about logistics. You know, this has been told to me that if when an NFL team moves to London, that they're going to have 2 options. That the NFL could say to them, look, you're going to have 2 17-day trips to London during the season and 1 9-day trip to London during the season. In other words, they're going to be over there for 3 weeks at a time, then back in the U.S. for 2 or 3 weeks, and then over there for 3, back and then over for 2, or in some way. So this is not absolutely going to be a situation where the team will move lock, stock, and barrel with everything to London. It's not, I don't know what it'll be, but that certainly is going to be one possibility. And then just about sort of the race to London, you know, one of the things that I've always been told is that London is going to be a part of this new collective bargaining agreement in some way. That, you know, there's going to be the ability of an owner to move to London, but there's going to have to be some concessions made to players. In other words, players are going to have to be able to make a premium if they play in London, because it'll be viewed as a hardship.
Definitely.
You know, on the player and on his family. So I believe that if it happens, okay, so the salary cap this year is going to be about $200 million. I believe that it'll be something, I'm going to make this up. For a team that plays in London, it'll be like 230, because you're going to have to be able to pay players more money to motivate them to play overseas.
And see, that's going to be the challenge, because any rules that are put in place for one or more teams in London, if those teams end up being wildly successful, the argument's going to be from the other teams, hey, you're doing too much. You're disrupting the competitive balance in a way that unfairly benefits the London teams by giving them more salary cap space, more draft picks, or whatever the case may be. And, you know, something occurred to me while you were explaining that, Peter. Maybe the end result isn't 2 teams in London on a full-time basis. Maybe it is 2 teams that split their schedule between their American home stadium and one of the 2 stadiums that are NFL ready in London. Maybe that's the way that it goes down. But there's too much money to be made by the NFL. They want to do this. And I'll tell you what, whatever they're doing in Jacksonville to make it like Patriot Place, if Shad Khan believes that 1 or 2 other teams are ready to move to London on a full-time basis and take his spot, that's going to accelerate whatever long-term plan he may have for London. So at some point, you're going to have these owners begin to wake up to how much money they can make there. And if they can work through the logistical aspects of it, we just have to be ready for it. They've talked about it for a long time, and I thought, they're just dangling a carrot to keep the people in London interested. They're never going to move a team there. Yesterday was the first time I thought, holy crap, they actually may move a team to London.
Well, we heard the Raiders complain, right, about all the travel they had to do. I just can't imagine a team being able to pull it off. And listen, I'm for it. I want it to happen. I'm just the realistic part of my brain, which is small, but yet it's still there, is telling me that's going to be tough. And, you know, the other thing I just think about, okay, yeah, you heard John Gruden, a lot of press conferences, oh, we flew 97,000 miles this year. And, oh, it was, you know, ridiculous. Man, that is going to be stressful on a team. Two, if there's another team if a team is in London, you know, how do you work out the playoffs to where that's fair too? You know, oh, hey, you're the team in London, and you know you're playing a game over there, the last game of Sunday night on Wild Card Weekend, right? And all of a sudden now you got scheduled for a Saturday game, and you were in London the day before, whatever it may be. To me, that's not fair to those teams either when it came to that time. So those are the logistics, at least of me as a player in my brain, where I go, man, that would piss me off if I was playing in the playoffs and having to go to London and then maybe go to the West Coast the next round 6 days later and be all messed up in my brain, you know, my clock, my body clock, and all those things.
Well,
all I can say is this: that Mike. All I can say is this: you think that the 32 owners and Roger Goodell and the NFL, when they're thinking about London, you think they're thinking about, man, it's going to be rough on the players if they have a quick turnaround for a playoff game.
Yeah. They're definitely not.
I doubt
right.
Hey, and that reminded me of when Elaine complained to David Putty she was going to hell, and he said, it's going to be rough. Yeah, it's going to be rough on you, not on me. You're absolutely right. One last point, though. I was reminded while we were talking of the story that Jarvis Landry told of Adam Gase when he was the coach of the Dolphins, threatening players, he'll trade you to Cleveland. I'll tell you what, you got a better threat you can make now. I'm trading you to London, baby. And I guarantee you there will be more no trade clauses, or specifically no trade to London clauses. That may be part of the CBA, because the last thing you want to have happen is get that phone call in October. You're going to London for the rest of the season and maybe beyond.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.